On the 21st of July 2016, Fosun International Limited brought Wolverhampton Wanderers Football Club from Steve Morgan for a reported £45 million. They're in the news a lot lately for being Wolves owners, and I thought I'd do a deep dive into their history and the highs and lows they've had in being the owners of Wolves as a football club. So yeah, as I mentioned, they brought it off Steve Morgan. Their first move was to bring in a guy called Jeff Shee to run things at the club. Just a bit of a backstory on Fosun. Their owner, Zhao Qingchang, I hope I got that right, I'm sorry if I haven't, founded them in 1992. They're an investment firm. They've pumped money in and got equity stakes in the likes of Cirque du Soleil, which you might know from Las Vegas, the lovely show where they do the cartwheels and all that. And they bowed out Thomas Cook. They're in all sorts. They've reported profit of 1.6 billion in 2021. So they know what they're doing. They're not stupid. The first thing Jeff Shee wanted to do was keep current CEO Jez Moxey with the club, but he did step down. Now, in hindsight, this is probably a big red flag because, as the Wolves fans know, Jez Moxey was a bit of a disaster. As Wolves CEO, he famously gave the West Bromwich Albion fans the South Bank in the FA Cup in 2007 when we lost 3-0 to them. So a lot of Wolves fans were glad to see him go after a lot of bad decisions. We then replaced Jez Moxey with Laurie Dalrymple. He got promoted into that position, and he was a highly thought of guy, to be fair, Laurie Dalrymple, but he was eventually let go, which we'll get on to. They appointed absolute nutcase Walter Zenga, Italian manager. He only lasted 14 games, but there were some good games in there. I remember we beat Newcastle away. They were top of the league. We were about 15th at the time. We beat Blues away 3-1. I think we beat Villa at home. I think that was his era. So yeah, and we also brought in a lot of players. Fosun were splashing the cash from the off. Some of the players we brought in held a cost of 15 million. Ivan Cavallero, Paul Gladden, João Teixeira, Prince Amayang. Oh, sorry, I can't pronounce it. But yeah, we had heavy links with Jorge Mendes, the super agent, and his firm. So we had a good link to get in some superstar players, and Fosun weren't messing about from the off, splashing the cash. We also loaned Richard Stearman back and players like that. We had a proper good go at it, but they were finding out pretty early on that it wasn't as straightforward as it seems to go out from the Championship. As I mentioned, Zenga got sacked after 14 games, and they then decided to bring in Paul Lambert in November of 2016 to take over the reins and hope to get us pushing up towards the promotion places. Lambert did okay, steadied the ship a bit. We had a good FA Cup famous victory, beating Liverpool 2-1 away. A couple of other players I forgot to mention. We had Romain Saiss, Jean Daddy Bodvarsson also coming. So we had, they proper bolstered the squad. The league form unfortunately did not pick up though. It was quite tough to watch at times. And at the end of the season, Paul Lambert did end up leaving role as Wolves manager. But next up becomes the best thing they ever did in appointing Nuno Espirito Santo at the beginning of the 2017-2018 season. So yeah, Fosun got their man, Nuno Espirito Santo, but their first choice, Julian Lopetegui, who will come into conversation later, did turn down Wolves. He was their number one choice, but he ended up getting the Spain job. And they weren't messing around again. They splashed the cash in the transfer market. We got in Ruben Neves for 18 million euros. He was a captain in the Champions League at the time. We got Diogo Jota. We got Willy Bolly. We got Ryan Bennett and John Ruddy in as free transfers for a bit of that Championship steel. We got Barry Douglas as a left back for £1 million. They really went for it. We got Leo Bonatini, a striker from the Saudi Arabian leagues, in to bolster the front line, and with Cavallero and Costa and players like that already there, and Connor Cody, we were in good hands. And in that pre-season, Nuno shocked everybody by switching the system to something we'd never seen before, with a 5 at the back. Cody as a sweeping playmaker, whipping the balls out to the wing backs, counter-attacking football, and it turned out that the Championship just could not cope with the superstar power we had and the tactical setup from Nuno. And we stormed the league and ended up getting 99 points It was a fantastic season as a Wolves fan. Fosun could do no wrong. Jeff Shee could do no wrong. We had Laurie Dalrymple everyone loved. And yeah, the connection between the fans and the club could never have been better. And we were in dreamland. It's as simple as that. It was everything that Fosun and Jeff Shee did turned to gold. And the Nuno era had begun. And it was a joy. It really was. We got promoted. We then signed the likes of Raul Jimenez, João Moutinho. We get Johnny in to replace the departing Barry Douglas. We get an international goalkeeper in Rui Patricio. It was just dreamland. Simple as that. And we do unbelievable. We get a 7th place finish in our first season in the Premier League. The transfer market's going unbelievable from Fosun. They're throwing money at it. And we're in dreamland. We overperform. Fosun's aim was to get into the Premier League after 3 seasons, not go straight up like we did. And we also qualified for European football. Also got to a semi-final of the FA Cup. It couldn't have been going any better. And Fosun must have been thinking, wow, this football managing ownership thing is very, very easy. This is too good to be true. We then, in the next season, we've got a lot to cope with. We've got Europa League football to contend with, as we've already mentioned. It starts off a bit rocky, but we do qualify for the Europa League. We go through the qualifying stages, beating the likes of Torino. In the group stage, we end up going through with some really good results, some memorable moments. Braga 3-3 away. We lost to Braga at home, but we had good wins against Besiktas away, last-minute volley. We do end up, though, get crashing out of the Europa League as COVID-19 hits. We lose to Sevilla over one leg. Julen Lopetegui's Sevilla in weird circumstances. And I do believe at that point, if COVID does not hit, we would have got to the Europa League final at least, because our momentum, we were absolutely flying. And at this point when COVID hit, it's probably when the Fosun era starts to turn a little bit sour on and off the pitch. Just before I get into the nitty-gritty of where it started to go wrong for Jeff Shee and Fosun at Wolves, there's a few things I want to point out. Jeff Shee did a questionable article that hasn't aged very well now. In September 2018, he released an interview with Sky Sports where he said that within 5 to 10 years, Wolves are going to be competing with the likes of Man City. So this just shows how easy he was finding life as Wolves chairman at the time, because everything was going so well. He later retracted these statements and said he was naive to say it. We also lost Laurie Dalrymple, who had a great rapport with the fans. He would drink beer in the pubs and things like that. He left under weird circumstances, was put on gardening leave in 2019. He was going to take Wolves to court for employment tribunal court case, but he later went against that. And I'm just mentioning these because when they started to get rid of the likes of Laurie Dalrymple, it started to go a bit pear-shaped. We also had Kevin Farewell, who's currently the director of football at Everton. He was a good director of football at Wolves, but in February 2020, he left for New York Red Bulls. And Jeff Shee ended up taking on most of these roles himself because he thought it was easy to do. But in hindsight, losing those two people was very unfortunate for Wolves, and when the cracks really started to appear. Wolves did manage 7th place in the second season in the Premier League under Nuno. After football restarted in the weird COVID era, a lot of fatigue was shown towards the end of the season because our season effectively started in July because of the Europa League qualifiers. We also had an international tour to China to promote the brand of Fosun, open up shops over there and work with their fashion brands. And this was starting to be a bit of a turning point where fans were getting frustrated because Fosun and Jeff Shee were concentrating a lot on the brand of Wolves and starting to go away from the actual stuff on the pitch. We did not qualify for European football again, despite finishing 7th because of the FA Cup final result. And yeah, it was a bit of an end to the season that we regret. And going into the next season, it really started to fall apart for Nuno, Fosun, Jeff Shee, and our transfer policies at that. For the 2020-21 season, this is when it really started to fall apart. The entire season ended up being played behind closed doors for the COVID-19 pandemic. In the summer of that season, which was a very small summer because of the late restart from the previous season and the Europa League run and things like that, we sold Diogo Jota to Liverpool for 40-odd million, who would go on to be a huge miss. Ryan Bennett left the club, Helder Costa left the club, Matt Doherty left for Spurs, who was a huge part of our system at the time and right wing back, creating a lot of goals and scoring a lot of goals. We brought in Fabio Silva for a lot of money at the time for a young kid who Jeff Shee loved and put all his backing behind. We brought in Ait Nouri, who's obviously gone on to be a good player, Nelson Semedo from Barcelona to replace Matt Doherty, and it just was not the same. We started off the season okay, but in an away game against Arsenal, Raul Jimenez fractured his skull. We did win the game 2-1, taking us up to 6th place in the league, but young Fabio Silva took on the responsibility of striker for the rest of the season, and we struggled heavily. Towards the end of the 2021 season, things started to go very difficult for Nuno. Not just the Raul Jimenez injury, but we played West Bromwich Albion in January time, lost 3-2, which was really bad for the club at the time. Nuno was reportedly missing his family and he could not go to Portugal to visit them because they were in the red zone. Then Fosun and Jeff Shee did something they never usually do, and they sat down and did an Ask Wolves series because the fans wanted to hear off them. At the time, they backed Nuno and said they want to keep him on despite results failing, us dropping down the league. But literally, as that episode aired, Nuno Espirito Santo announced he was leaving with mutual consent at the end of that Premier League season. It come as a massive shock to the Wolves fan base at the time, because obviously he was beloved by the fans, and although we ended up finishing 13th that season, the most of the fans wanted him to stay. A lot didn't, but I'd probably say most did. I'll reference that Ask Wolves. Jeff Shee and that started to mention the horrid words of sell to buy and self-sustainable. And those words are going to go on to haunt us later on in this video, as you will see. After the emotional departure of Nuno Espirito Santo, Fosun and Jeff Shee wanted to change it up a bit. They wanted to play attractive football. They wanted to go away from the counter-attacking, organised style of Nuno. And we went for former Benfica manager or head coach Bruno Lage, who had a good spell, which did fall off a cliff admittedly, but he was highly rated, and they wanted more of a coach to get us playing some nice ticky-tacky football. We saw the end of the likes of Rui Patricio. We got in Jose Sarr. We got in Huangi Chan. We got in Kawabi. Yeah, no, me neither. He was Chinese. They were just trying to get the international fan base from China to start supporting Wolves, but we never saw him make an appearance. On Huangi Chan, that started to bring in the overseas audience, so Fosun loved that. We also already had Raul Jimenez, who brought in the South American audience. And around this time was when Fosun and Jeff were starting to get into esports and having us on NBA skins, on Fortnite, all this mad stuff trying to grow the brand. Starting to forget about things on the pitch at this point. But we did get Trincao as well, was a winger we got in. So we made a few decent signings. We also got in Diego Costa in the January, which I never thought I'd say he'd be playing for Wolves. And the season, we were flying. We were flying at one point. We were on the verge of top 6 or top 7. We were playing some good stuff. We had a historic win away at Man United, 1-0. João Moutinho scoring, but it slowly started to fall apart. They let Adama Traore go on loan to Barcelona at the end of January, and a few injuries here and there killed us, and we fell off a cliff, which is a bit of a recurring theme towards the end of seasons under Fosun, because if it's going okay, they never want to back us to go that extra step in the January window. They just contain with what we got. So yeah, we fell away, finished 10th under Bruno Lage. The end of the season was awful. We did another Jeff Shee did another Ask Wolves video towards the end of that season, with introducing the likes of Scott Sellers and various other people. Vinny Jones, the ticket man, all these people. Scott Sellers was starting to come into the limelight at this point because he was basically the new Laurie Dalrymple. Bruno Lage got off to an absolute shocker in the season after, into the new season. Again, we were just selling players. and just trying to get cheap options in. Fabio Silva still wasn't working. And we had an absolute stinker to the start of the season. Kalajic, the new striker we brought in, did his ACL after our first few games, and it wasn't looking good. We got sacked Bruno Lage after he had a bit of a head loss and put Ruben Neves at centre-half away at West Ham. We were really desperate to get Julian Lopetegui in, but he had a poorly father at the time. So Steve Davis come in as caretaker manager. We approached Michael Beale, which I'm so happy that didn't happen. He turned us down and stayed at QPR. He went on to have a disastrous career after that, by the way, so we dodged a bullet there. But then Lopetegui's dad got better, and he finally took over during the World Cup of 2022. We were really struggling at the time. We'd only had one win. We'd only scored 3 goals. But they promised to back Julian Lopetegui in the January transfer window to get us out the mess we were in and try and survive. And they were good on that promise. We got in Cunha, we got in Dawson, we got in Lamina, we got in Boubacar Traore. So they had backed him. They were splashing some big money, especially on Cunha. I think it was nearly 40-50 million for him. And we did survive that season. Ended up coming about, he was comfortable in the end. We ended up coming about 14th, 15th. But it all started to fall apart because they'd promised Lopetegui to back him again heavily in that summer. Fosun didn't want to do it. They wanted to try and stick to this self-sustained model. Lopetegui felt a bit lied to, and they had spent money, but that was because they were desperate and they thought we were going to lose our Premier League status, which would be a disaster for Fosun as a business, as you know, because we'd lose a lot of money. But Lopetegui left. He fell out with Jeff Shee behind the scenes. He was still getting on all right with Hobbs, and he left the club in a very bizarre circumstance with just a week to go to the start of the new season, leaving us in a bit of a crap situation. Just before I get on to who took over Lopetegui, I forgot to mention Scott Sellers around the time Steve Davis was in caretaker charge. He lost his job because he was basically running the team. There was pictures of him in the stands with whiteboards, messaging down to Steve Davis and things like that. And he was a lot to blame for a lot of things that were going wrong at the time. Was he just taking the bullets for Jeff Shee? Probably, in hindsight. He got blamed for the Adama Traore loan to Barcelona, which was a terrible move at the time, as mentioned. But yeah, so Hobbs was the new man to come in. Jeff Shee's new puppet master for the in-between the manager and the higher-ups. Lopetegui left. We had to pay him a lot of money because he had a lucrative deal and all his backroom staff. We had to pay him off around 8 to 10 million, I believe it was. We went for a rigorous interview process, and Matt Hobbs ended up appointing Gary O'Neill, who had just left Bournemouth. Harshly in a lot of people's eyes, but the Bournemouth fans were happy about it. They did not want to keep him because they were frustrated with his football, despite him keeping them up and doing a good job. O'Neill had a very tough job on his hands. We'd lost the likes of Ruben Neves, Traore left, Raul Jimenez left, some on a free, some for a decent fee. But we still had an okay team there, and we surprised a lot of people. We started off the season well. Well, it had a bit of a blip, but then we beat Man City, pushed on, ended up having a famous win against West Brom in the FA Cup. And then, as always, under Fosun, we get to January looking like we're going to be pushing up towards the top 8, top 7. And we're having a good run in the FA Cup at that moment. But they decide not to back Gary O'Neill. It was deja vu. Didn't get a striker in. Didn't get any attacking players in to replace the injured Cunha at the time and the injured Neto. Huang got injured. And it fell off a cliff. We lost to Coventry in the FA Cup quarter-finals, and we hardly won a game. I think we only beat Luton towards the end of the season and ended up finishing down in 14th place. Now, at this point, a lot of fans wanted Gary O'Neill to leave in the summer because they blamed him, despite injuries, for our poor end to the season. But, like me and a few other fans, we thought, no, let's keep Gary O'Neill on. They didn't, look, we sold again. We sold Max Kilman. We sold Neto for over 100 million. We brought in a few players, Strand Larson on loan, as you know. We're at current day now. Jeff kept coming out with some bizarre things. He was emailing fans back when there was a lot of complaints about the season ticket prices going up by 12% for adults and God knows how much for others, like old age pensioners. They tried to put up 100% for the under 12s. Big backlash. It's all about the money. for Jeff Shee and Fosun. He was benchmarking us to the likes of Aston Villa, who were in the Champions League, when he was comparing ticket prices, which is mental. And there was clips of Matt Hobbs telling Strand Larsen that we were going to be pushing for Europe. Season got off to an absolute disaster. We had tough fixtures, but they continued to back Gary O'Neill, even though it was going very bad. And we're at present day now. You know it. We're here this season. Jeff, very rarely, since doing those few Ash Wolves episodes, very rarely would pop up and do little interviews. And every time he did, he would just anger the Wolves fans. They clearly don't want to pump any more money in. It's making the job very difficult for O'Neill because he just has to work with young players who are not proven right now. And we keep selling our best players. They always blame FFP. That's all we've heard over the last few years. Is it true? Maybe. But we've never been done by financial fair play like Everton did. So could have been a smokescreen. I think they've just fed up of pumping money in now because there's Fabio Silva deal, even Semedo to a certain extent. We've pumped a lot of money on transfers, and I don't think they like that model. So the self-sustain and the sell-to-buy was what they wanted to do. Bring in young lads and sell them on for a profit, like Max Kilman got him from Maidenhead for 20-odd grand, sold him to West Ham for millions, 40-odd million. That's what they want. So we're at current day. This is where we are. We're in the new season. We're approaching January. We've won 2 games. We're in the bottom 3. They were refusing to sack Gary O'Neill because they understand that the off-the-field decisions, i.e. Fosun, Jeff Shee not wanting to back him properly with the funds, is part of the reason why we're struggling. And also, I just don't think they want to pay O'Neill off because they gave him a new 4-year deal. And I don't think they want to pay a good manager or get us out of it like they did with Lopetegui all that money to do it. In summary, let's just go in summary now. They've been brilliant the first few years. Fosun were absolutely brilliant, but I think they got it too easy. And then as we've seen, Jeff Shee was a bit out of his depth, getting rid of people around him, like we mentioned, Dalrymple, Felwell, started to try and do jobs himself. And he's realised that it's not easy being a Premier League owner. And I think they've also realised there's not a lot of money to be made. It's hard to make money as a Premier League owner because you have to spend 100 million just to stay level with your competition. And as we're finding out, if you don't back the manager and spend money on players, the trajectory is downwards. As I record this on Wednesday, what's the date today? 11th of December 2024. Wolves are on 9 points in the bottom 3. We play relegation rivals Ipswich and Leicester in the next 2. And what is going to happen next? I have no idea. I hope we survive, but I doubt it. And it would be Jeff Shee and Fosun's fault if we don't. I'm happy for the best years of my life as supporting Wolves that Fosun brought us in the Europa League, in an FA Cup semi-final, and some memorable wins against big teams, against teams we should not have been beating, and the 7th place finishes punching above our weight. But I do feel they've run their course as owners of Wolverhampton Wanderers, and just like managers have their time, I think the owners have had their time. It's time for them to sell up and maybe give other owners a chance because they have had enough of pumping money in and they no longer have interest in having Wolves as a European playing Premier League football team, in my opinion. Please like and subscribe if you are new. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll catch you next video. Cheers, everybody.